My name is Nathan Cole, and I grew up in a place that doesn't appear on most maps. The sign by the highway used to say, "Welcome to Dry Creek, population 712," but that was before the paint faded and the county stopped maintaining the road. Now, if you drive through, you'd think it was just another stretch of farmland and forgotten houses. Nothing here stands out except maybe the silence and the rule. Everyone in Dry Creek knows the rule. You don't break it. You don't question it. You don't even joke about it. My mother told me before I could tie my shoes. My teachers reminded us before every field trip, and every newcomer, if there ever was one, learned within a day or two. The rule was simple. When the siren sounds after midnight, you don't look outside. That was it. No explanation, no story. Just a command wrapped in generations of fear. As a kid, I thought it was some small town superstition. Every place has one. Don't whistle at night. Don't swim in the quarry. Don't drive past Miller's Hill after dark. I thought the siren was just an old air raid alarm from the 50s, something the town used for tornado warnings that somehow became folklore. But the older I got, the less it felt like a story. The first time I heard the siren, I was 8 years old. It started as a low groan, distant but heavy, like thunder rolling through steel. My mother froze mid-step, her glass of water trembling in her hand. I remember the way she looked at me, eyes wide, voice thin. "Go to your room, Nathan. Don't look outside." I tried asking why, but she just whispered, "Please," and shut the lights. That night, the siren howled 3 times, long, uneven wails that made the walls vibrate. Through the thin curtains, I could see flickers of movement on the street. Not cars, not people. Something slower, almost floating. My child curiosity burned to peak, but the fear in my mother's voice kept me rooted in bed. When morning came, the town looked the same. No one talked about it. Kids went to school, men opened their shops, women swept porches. But there was a tension in the air, like static before lightning. A few mailboxes were gone, one dog had vanished. That's how it always went, I learned. Something small missing, never anyone important. My mother never explained what the siren meant. She just said, "It keeps us safe." When I asked from what, she said, "From what comes with it." Years passed, and I learned to stop asking. That's what you did in Dry Creek. You learned the rule, you followed it, and you didn't dig. The town had a way of burying things that didn't want to be found. By the time I was 17, I wanted out. The siren was just another excuse for control, I figured. We were a town trapped by our own fear. I told my mother I'd leave after graduation. She smiled, but it wasn't joy, it was that tired, worried smile people wear when they already know you won't make it far. I didn't listen. There's a certain kind of stillness in small towns after midnight. It's not peace, it's emptiness. The world feels paused, like everyone's holding their breath. That night, I stayed out late with friends near the old water tower. We were drinking cheap beer, talking about getting out, laughing at how ridiculous the siren was. Then it happened. A long metallic wail tore through the dark. Not loud at first, just wrong. It sounded like something trying to imitate a siren but missing the pitch, like a voice dragging against metal. My friends fell silent. "Relax," I said, pretending calm. "It's just the wind through the old speakers." But the others were already leaving. Tyler and Matt grabbed their bikes and pedaled off. I was about to follow when I noticed something odd. The air around the tower was vibrating, like heat waves on asphalt. Then the dogs started barking. Every house down the road came alive with motion lights and shouting. Doors slammed. Windows locked. I stood frozen, the bottle slipping from my hand. The siren wailed again, longer this time, echoing through the trees like it came from everywhere at once. I ran. By the time I reached home, my mother was waiting by the door. She yanked me inside and locked it behind me. The lights were off, curtains drawn. She didn't say a word, just pulled me down behind the couch and covered my mouth. Then we waited. Outside, the siren stopped. For a few seconds, there was perfect silence. Then footsteps, slow, dragging ones, moved along the street. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them, like the air itself got heavier when they passed. My mother's hand tightened on mine. Something brushed the porch railing, light and deliberate, as if fingers were tracing the wood. Then a knock, just one. It wasn't at the door. It came from the window, barely a tap, but too high up for anyone to reach without standing on something. My mother whispered, barely audible, "Don't breathe." I didn't. The tapping came again, softer, slower, like it was listening. The sound moved across the glass, 3 slow drags like nails or bone. Then nothing. The siren wailed one last time, shorter, almost tired. After that, silence. We stayed there until dawn. When the sun rose, the town returned to normal. People mowed lawns. The store opened. But everyone's eyes were rimmed red, and no one mentioned the siren. That morning, something changed in me. Fear, yes, but also curiosity. I'd heard it, felt it, almost seen it. And I needed to know what's. Over the years, I asked around. Some said the siren came from the old mining tunnels beneath the hill. Others swore it was a leftover Cold War alert system that picked up radio interference. A few whispered about the ones from before the town, but when I pressed, they'd clam up, eyes darting like they'd said too much. I started keeping notes, times, patterns, anything. The siren didn't follow a schedule. Sometimes it came twice in a month, sometimes not for a year. Always after midnight. Always lasting less than 10 minutes. Always followed by something missing. A mailbox. Once, a whole section of fence. But never a person. Not since the Jenkins boy, and that was before my time. My mother hated my questions. She said some things were better left unknown. But the older I got, the less that worked on me. So one night, when I was 21 and living alone in my father's old house by the edge of the fields, I decided to break the rule. I told myself it was stupid. A test, nothing more. I'd prove to myself that the siren was just superstition, an echo from old speakers, or some prank the older folks kept alive. That night, the air was still. No wind, no frogs, just that heavy quiet that makes you feel like you're underwater. I sat by the window with the curtains slightly parted, notebook in hand. Midnight came and went. Then at 12:43, the siren began. It was deeper this time, closer. The walls trembled, my hands shook, but I kept writing, frequency, duration, tone. Then I looked up, across the road. The streetlight flickered once, twice, then went out. Shadows pooled along the fence lines. The air shimmered like heat, but the night was cold. Something moved between the houses. It wasn't running or walking. It was gliding. Smooth, wrong, like a film skipping frames. I tried to make out its shape, but the more I stared, the more it seemed to blur, as if my eyes refused to hold it. It was tall, maybe 8 feet, bending as it passed under tree limbs. When it reached the end of the street, it stopped, then turned, and I realized it wasn't moving toward the houses. It was moving toward me. I dropped the notebook. The siren grew louder, pulsing like a heartbeat. The curtains swayed though the window was closed. I should have backed away. Instead, I froze, watching as the thing crossed the road in a few strides. Its edges shimmered like smoke in moonlight. There were arms, too many of them, and a head that tilted with a sound like cracking wood. Then it raised something, its hand, or what passed for one, and tapped on the glass. Once, twice, 3 times, the siren stopped, and in the silence that followed I heard a voice. It wasn't loud. It was almost gentle. "Nathan." I didn't remember falling. I woke on the floor at dawn, face pressed against the cold boards. The window was unbroken, the curtains drawn. Outside, the world looked normal again. Birds, sunlight, neighbors sweeping driveways. Except across the street where my mailbox used to stand, there was only a patch of disturbed dirt. That was 3 years ago, and the siren hasn't sounded since. But lately, when the night's quiet and the air feels too still, I think I can hear something faint beneath the hum of the power lines. Not a siren, not yet. Just the first breath of it, and I wonder if maybe the rule wasn't to protect us from it. Maybe it was to keep it from knowing who was still watching. Morning light hit like nothing had happened. Birds on the fence, Mrs. Callahan watering her roses, the same thin smell of diesel from the feed trucks rolling by. Dry Creek had a way of pretending. It could look normal after anything, after a storm, a fire, a missing person. The world reset, and everyone played along. But I didn't. When I woke on the floor, my throat was raw from breathing dust. My notebook was open beside me. The last thing written a single shaky line. It knows my name. I didn't remember writing it. I spent the morning pacing, checking the window again and again. No marks, no handprints, nothing to prove what I'd seen. The only sign was the torn patch of dirt where the mailbox had stood, like something had been dug up or pulled down. By noon, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. The mind can do strange things under fear and fatigue. Maybe it was a nightmare. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at the window and dreamed the whole thing. Then I saw Sheriff Hartman's truck parked outside. He was talking to my neighbor, Old Man Wilkes. Both men glanced toward my house as I stepped out. Hartman's expression was flat, unreadable, the way small, town lawmen look when they already know what they're going to say. "Morning, Nathan," he said. "Heard there was some commotion out here last night." I forced a laugh. No commotion. Just a long night. Wilkes spat tobacco into the grass. "Saw your lights on past one. You know better than that." I didn't answer. Hartman's gaze drifted to the spot where the mailbox used to be. He rubbed his jaw. "Strange thing. Seems like it just vanished." "Yeah," I said, dryly. "Guess someone needed mail more than me." Hartman didn't smile. "You hear the siren?" My heart skipped. "Everyone did. Not everyone," he said quietly. "Half the town claims it didn't sound at all." That stopped me. "What do you mean?" "Means whatever it means." He tipped his hat. "Best you get a new mailbox and some rest. You look like you've seen a ghost." Then he left. Wilkes lingered just long enough to mutter, "Keep your curtains shut next time, boy." The rest of the day passed in a blur of chores I didn't remember doing. By sunset, the unease had settled into something heavier. Guilt. I'd broken the only rule the town had, and nothing felt right since. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air was too thick, the crickets too quiet. Around 2, I heard footsteps on gravel. I peered through the curtain, careful not to part it too wide. Just a silhouette, Sheriff Hartman again, standing by the road. He looked at my house for a long time, then at the empty patch of ground. His hand lifted slightly, as if to knock, but he turned away instead. The next morning, he was gone. That day, the power went out across town. No storm, no warning, just darkness in the middle of lunch. The diner went silent. The radio died mid-song. I was sitting at the counter when it happened. People froze, waiting. For a moment, everyone's eyes flicked to the clock above the register. 12:01, broad daylight. Then someone whispered, "It's too early." No one needed to say what they meant. The siren. It didn't come, though. Just the hum of wind through the vents, the distant rattle of a truck engine that cut out too fast. The power returned 5 minutes later, and the world started breathing again. But that fear, the kind that lives in your ribs, stayed. I went home and dug through my father's old storage chest. He'd been a mechanic for the town council before he died, and I remembered him once mentioning the siren system. Back when I was small, he'd taken me to the maintenance shed by the old quarry. "This controls the alarms," he said. "Never touch it." Now I meant to. The shed stood behind a chain link fence at the edge of town, half swallowed by weeds. The lock was rusted, the pad heavy and cold. I forced it open with a screwdriver. Inside, the air smelled of oil and mold. Rows of metal panels lined the walls, switches, dials, cables running up through the ceiling toward the towers on the hill. Most of it looked dead, but a small green light blinked in the far corner. A power indicator. Something was still active. I followed the cables to a narrow metal box labeled Siren Control Relay Manual Override. Inside, a tape reel was spinning. Not fast, just enough to make a low whirring hum. A label read, "Property of Dry Creek Civil Defense, 1962. But the tape wasn't playing anything. It was recording. I froze, watching the reels turn. Then I heard it, barely audible, buried under static, a whisper. "Nathan." My name. I tore the cable loose. The reel stopped instantly. The silence that followed was thick, unnatural. Then a second sound, a shuffle from behind me. I turned, expecting wind or an animal, but the doorway was empty, just faint dust motes hanging in a shaft of sunlight. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that something had been standing there a heartbeat ago. I left fast, locking the door behind me. and didn't stop walking until I hit Main Street. That evening, I called my mother. Her voice trembled when she heard me say Zarin. "Nathan, you shouldn't have gone near that place," she said. "Your father warned you for a reason." "What reason?" I demanded. "What's really out there?" She went quiet long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "It's not out there. It's under." The line clicked dead. I tried calling back. Nothing. The next morning, her house was empty. Coffee cup still warm, back door unlocked, car in the driveway. No note, no trace. I called Hartman, but he didn't answer either. When I drove to his office, the blinds were shut, and a single word was spray painted across the door in reddish tie. For the first time in my life, I felt like the only person left in town. That night, I heard it again, not the siren but the voice, soft from the walls. From under the floorboards, it said my name once, then something else. Something I couldn't catch. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I went back to the quarry. The fog sat heavy over the water, thick as concrete dust. The old access tunnel that led into the hill was still there, half collapsed but passable. My father used to say the tunnels ran all the way beneath Dry Creek, relics from the old mining days before the town was built. The siren towers were connected to them somehow. I needed to know how deep the lie went. I climbed inside. The air smelled of iron and rot. My flashlight beam caught rusted rails, splintered beams, and deep claw marks in the walls. Not tool marks, scratches, gouges, as if something had been trying to get out. A few hundred feet in, I found a junction sealed by a metal door. Faded letters read "Authorized personnel only." The handle was welded shut, but there was a small vent near the floor. Warm air drifted through it, breathing, steady, slow. I crouched and pressed my ear to the vent. For a moment, nothing. Then a faint sound, rhythmic. A hum rising and falling. The siren. But quieter, slower, and beneath it, whispers, many of them. They weren't speaking words I knew, but the cadence was almost human, like people praying underwater. Then one voice broke through the rest. "Clear near. Don't look outside." I stumbled back. My flashlight hit the wall and went dark. In the blackness, something scraped the other side of the door. Not knocking, dragging. The sound followed me as I crawled backward through the tunnel, faster and faster, until I saw daylight again. By the time I reached my truck, the sun was already high. The siren towers loomed above the ridge, silent as tombstones. I drove home shaking, mud smeared across my clothes, heart racing. There was a note nailed to my front door. No name, just 5 words: "You broke it. Fix it fast." I didn't know who left it. Maybe Hartman. Maybe no one human. That night, the siren didn't sound, but the air pulsed with something unseen. Power lines buzzed even with the current off. Dogs barked at nothing. And when I looked out at the fields, I saw movement, ripples in the tall grass, like something large was shifting just beneath the soil. The rule had always been about the siren, about staying inside. But now I understood it differently. It wasn't just a warning to hide. It was containment. The siren wasn't scaring us into silence. It was keeping them down there. And now that I'd pulled the cable, maybe they weren't staying down anymore. I didn't leave town that morning, though I should have. Every road out of Dry Creek is just a 2-lane ribbon through farmland. No shoulders, no lights. The nearest highway's 40 miles west, and I'd seen what happens to people who try to leave after things turn strange. They don't get far. The car breaks down, or fog rolls in, or they circle back without realizing it. That's what happened to the Jenkins boy's father years ago, the last man who went missing outside the siren's reach. So I stayed. Not out of courage, just a sense that running wouldn't matter. By noon, the town was quiet again, unnaturally so. The grocery store sat open but empty. The diner clock still ticked, though no one worked behind the counter. Even the church doors were shut. A hand-painted sign nailed to the steps. Parkrangerstories. Something had shifted since I'd cut the cable in the quarry. Dry Creek wasn't pretending anymore. It was waiting. I went to Town Hall, a squat brick building that always smelled of mildew. The clerk's desk was empty, but the door to the archives was unlocked. Inside were rows of filing cabinets older than I was, each labeled by decade. I started with the 1960s, the year stamped on the siren tape. The folders were brittle dust-coated, but after an hour I found one labeled Civil Defense Emergency Infrastructure. Inside were diagrams of the siren system, 5 towers connected by underground relays, all feeding into a central generator below the quarry. There were maintenance logs too, signed by names I recognized: Hartman, my father, and one I didn't, J. Ellery. I skimmed through his notes. The handwriting was erratic, slanted, as if written in a hurry. Sound barrier holds when active. Subject behavior limited to perimeter. Must maintain regular intervals, then lower down. Voices increasing each cycle. Recommend full shutdown. Denied by counsel. The final entry was just one sentence scrawled across the page. If the siren stops, they will remember. I sat there for a long time, the words sinking in. Remember what? I copied the notes into my pocket notebook and started to leave, but the hallway light thickened. When it steadied, someone was standing by the door, Sheriff Hartman. Except his face looked wrong, paler, eyes sunk deep like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't move, just said, "You shouldn't be here." "I need answers," I said. "Where's my mother?" He stepped closer. The smell hit me first, earth and rust. His badge was gone. "You broke it." "Son," he whispered. Before I could react, he was gone. No footsteps, no door sound, just gone. I left the building fast, heart slamming, and nearly ran into Mrs. Callahan outside. Her eyes were glassy, fixed on the sky. She said, "They're already walking," then shuffled past me, barefoot. That evening, fog rolled in early, thick and gray, not the usual kind that sits low. It came in high, clinging to rooftops, swallowing the streetlights one by one. By the time I reached my porch, the whole town looked drowned in smoke. Then I saw them. Figures, faint, moving between houses. Not solid, shapes within shapes, like heat mirages. Each one walking slowly, turning its head as if searching. And as they passed, my radio clicked on by itself, the siren. But softer this time, more like a heartbeat through static. And woven through it, voices. "Nathan," they said. Not one, but many. I dropped the radio. It still pulsed on the floor, speaker trembling like a living thing. I ran to my truck and drove. The road out of town stretched straight for miles, but the fog thickened ahead until I couldn't see more than a few feet. When I glanced in the mirror, the street behind was gone. No lights, no houses, nothing. Just gray. Then a shape appeared in the beam of my headlights. A woman, standing in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded sideways, stopped inches from her. She didn't flinch. It was my mother. Her hair hung wet against her face, her clothes streaked with mud. She looked at me, eyes empty, and said, "You have to finish it." "Finish what?" "The barrier." She lifted her hand and pressed something against the glass. A rusted key, long and thin, with a number etched on the handle, 5. Then she stepped back into the fog and disappeared. I don't remember driving home, only that I woke the next morning on the couch, the key on the coffee table where I must have dropped it. Everything outside was quiet again, but it didn't feel like calm. It felt like the breath before a scream. I spent the day researching the old council members from the 60s. Most were long dead, except one, Joseph Ellery, the man who wrote the notes. According to town records, he'd retired to a cabin by the Northern Ridge after a disagreement over emergency protocols. No death certificate, no burial record. I packed a flashlight, some food, and the key, and headed for the ridge. The trail wound through pine forest and shale slopes up toward an old fire road. The air grew colder with each step. When I reached the cabin, the door was half open. Inside, everything was coated in dust, but the table held a set of blueprints. The same siren schematics I'd seen before, only these were marked with circles in red ink around each tower. Beside them lay a notebook. The last page read, "They were never sirens. They were seals." A floorboard creaked behind me. I turned. Someone was standing in the doorway, Hartman again, or something wearing his shape. Its shadow stretched wrong across the floor, bending toward me even though the light came from behind. "You can't fix it," it said. "It's already heard you." Then the air filled with that low, trembling hum again, the same one from the tunnels, vibrating through the walls. The glass in the window quivered. Dust rose from the floor. I grabbed the notebook and ran. Outside, the fog had reached the ridge. It was moving uphill, not drifting, crawling like something alive. I tore down the trail, stumbling over rocks, heart hammering. Behind me, I heard the cabin splinter, timbers cracking one by one as if crushed by weight. Then silence. When I reached the truck, the fog was already spilling between the trees. I started the engine, floored it, and didn't look back. That night, I studied the blueprints again. Each tower marked a point on a circle around town. The quarry was the center, the hub. The number 5 was the tower closest to my house. The key was meant for it. I knew what I had to do. The next evening, I climbed the hill behind my property. Tower 5 stood rusted and skeletal, its ladder twisted with vines. The door at the base was padlocked, but the key turned cleanly. Inside was a narrow metal stair and the smell of burned wires. At the top sat the main console, covered in dust. The power light glowed faintly green. Beneath it, a single switch labeled manual override, the same label as in the quarry box. If these towers were seals, then flipping this switch might close the one I'd broken, or destroy whatever balance still existed. The air felt heavy, charged. I thought I heard breathing through the vents, deep and distant. I wrapped my hand around the switch, and the siren began. Without warning, without power, loud enough to rattle the tower. It wasn't the usual sound. It was lower, full of voices. I could hear words inside it this time, sentences tumbling over one another, all whispering the same thing. Remember us. Remember us. Remember us. Through the slats of the tower, I saw lights below. Every house in Dry Creek flickering on and off in perfect rhythm with the siren's pulse. The ground itself seemed to move, rippling like something vast was shifting beneath the town. I flipped the switch. The siren cut out instantly. The lights below went dark. For a moment, total silence. Then a single note, soft as breath, rose from under the earth, and something answered. The ground shuddered so hard the tower groaned. A red glow spread from the quarry, a slow pulse like a heartbeat through soil and stone. I watched in horror as cracks began to open along Main Street, visible even from the hill, releasing thin streams of light. The seals weren't holding anymore. They were opening. I stumbled down from the tower, legs shaking, and as my boots hit the dirt, I saw movement in the glow below. Silhouettes. Dozens, then hundreds, rising from the cracks, unfolding like shadows learning to stand. They weren't human. Not anymore. But they remembered the shape, and all of them turned toward me. The hill shook beneath my feet. For a second, I thought it was thunder, until I realized thunder doesn't come from below. The red light blood through the soil like molten veins, spreading outward in lines that formed the same circle I'd seen on the blueprints. Dry Creek's boundary. The whole town was lighting up like a buried engine coming back online. The air tasted metallic. The sound wasn't a siren anymore. It was breathing. Slow, synchronized with the pulse of the earth. Every inhale drew fog up from the ground. Every exhale sent it crawling toward the houses. I ran. Halfway down the slope, the first figure stepped from the glow. Human-sized but stretched, limbs too long, skin rippling like thin water over stone. Its face was smooth, featureless until it turned toward me. Then, as if remembering, a mouth opened where none had been. It whispered my name the way wind whistles through a bottle. I stumbled backward and slid the rest of the hill on my side, landing hard in the grass. The town below was chaos, lights flickering, rooftops bending as something heavy moved beneath them. The sound of cracking wood mixed with distant screams. My truck was parked near the edge of the field. I ran for it, but the ground kept shifting, soft one step, solid the next. The red glow pulsed under the dirt like embers beneath ash. When I reached the truck, the engine refused to start. The headlights flickered once and died. I turned the key until smoke rose from the dash. Then I heard the first impact, something slamming into the door from outside, a wet, heavy thud. Through the windshield I saw hands, dozens of them, pressing against the glass from all sides. Some looked human, some didn't. They pushed without sound, palms leaving streaks that smoked where they touched. I crawled out the passenger side and bolted toward the road. Behind me, the truck groaned and caved inward, metal folding like paper. The hands sank with it, vanishing into the ground as if pulled by suction. Every instinct screamed to run for the forest. but the light from the quarry drew me instead. The red pulse had turned white hot, shining straight up like a pillar through the fog. I couldn't explain why, only that every fiber in me said the answer. The fix was there. The road cracked beneath my boots as I reached Main Street. Houses leaned at impossible angles. The diner windows shattered outward. Through the steam and light I saw people, neighbors, walking in slow procession toward the quarry. Their eyes glowed faintly red, and their movements were synchronized, like marionettes following one invisible rhythm. When I called to them, none turned. I followed anyway. The closer we got, the stronger the vibration became, until my teeth ached from it. The old chain fence around the pit was gone, melted to slag. The center glowed with blinding light, and inside it, something vast was turning. Not a shape I could name, just motion too large to belong here. And above it, suspended in the beam, hung the siren's heart. A black sphere the size of a car, turning slowly, metal ribs opening and closing like a breathing lung. With every pulse it drew fog from the forest, feeding on it. Then I saw her, my mother, standing at the edge of the pit. Her body flickered, half there, half gone, as if the light itself couldn't decide whether to keep her. She turned and smiled, but it wasn't relief I saw. It was understanding. "You opened it," she said softly. "Now it remembers everything." "What is it?" Her eyes shimmered red. "Ooze. What we forgot to bury." The ground split behind her. Figures were climbing out, thousands of them. Half-formed shapes pressing into the light. Faces rearranging themselves from memory, people I knew, people long dead, people who'd never existed here at all. I fell to my knees. The hum filled my chest until it felt like another heartbeat inside me. The sphere pulsed faster, brighter, until the sound became a roar. Then, silence. The light snapped out. For a moment I saw nothing but afterimage. When my sight cleared, the pit was empty. The figures were gone. My mother too. Only the fog remained, slowly sinking back into the cracks. I stayed there until sunrise. The town below looked untouched again. No broken roofs, no glowing ground, no walking shapes. Just still streets and the faint smell of ozone. But when I reached my house, every clock was frozen at 3:11 a.m. I tried the radio, static. Tried my phone. Dead. Then the siren sounded once, short, single, like an exhale, and everything came again, power, phones, birds, as if the world had rebooted. For 2 days, Dry Creek acted normal. People reappeared where they'd been missing, carrying on conversations mid-sentence. The diner opened. Hartman's truck drove past with him inside, waving like always. I wanted to believe it was over, that the switch or the light, or whatever I'd done had reset things. But the air was wrong. Too clean, too rehearsed. On the third day, I visited my mother's house. She was there, cooking breakfast, humming. Except she'd never been left-handed before. When I asked where she'd been, she smiled. "Nowhere, sweetheart. You must have dreamed again." The sound of her voice made the back of my neck prickle. I left without finishing my coffee. That night, I went through the notes I'd taken from Ellery's journal. Between the lines of text, faint pencil impressions showed another sentence. Erased but still visible when held to the light. "If the seals break, the town will rebuild itself around what comes through." Rebuild itself. I stepped outside. The sky above Dry Creek looked too sharp. Stars arranged in constellations I didn't recognize. The air buzzed faintly, like distant machinery. And from somewhere deep underground came a slow, steady rhythm, like a siren breathing in its sleep. Around 2 a.m. the phone rang, no caller ID. When I answered, it was my mother's voice, but softer, thinner. "Nathan," she said. "You didn't finish." The line cut. I drove back to the quarry before I could talk myself out of it. The fog was waiting again, perfectly still. At the center of the pit, where the sphere had been, there was now a black doorway, an absence shaped like a wound. From inside came the faint whir of tape reels turning. I climbed down carefully, flashlight trembling in my hand. The dirt under my boots felt alive, pulsing with each beat of my heart. When I reached the bottom, I saw the real recorder, the same one from the relay box, sitting upright in the dust, still recording. On the tape, a voice whispered in loops. "Don't look outside. Don't look outside." I tore the tape out and crushed it under my boot, But the whisper didn't stop. It came from everywhere now, the ground, the air, my own chest. Then a hand rose from the dirt beside me. Thin, gray, trembling. Another followed and another until dozens reached upward. The fog above the pit began to spin, forming a slow vortex. I scrambled for the ladder, hauling myself up as the ground caved in. From below came that same collective voice, now screaming instead of whispering, "Remember us." When I reached the top, the first hand caught my ankle, cold as stone. I kicked free, rolled onto the gravel, and ran until the light of the pit dimmed behind me. By the time I got home, dawn was breaking. The siren tower on the hill was gone. Nothing left but a circle of scorched grass. I sat on the porch for hours, waiting for someone, anyone, to drive by. No one did. Then, just before noon, the mail truck appeared. The same driver I'd known all my life. He smiled, handed me a single envelope, and drove away without another word. The envelope was blank except for 3 typed lines: DRY across to our epiopiopa artiv. Inside was a photograph, an aerial view of the town. But where my house should have been, there was only an empty field. I looked up from the photo. The porch, the yard, the road. Everything shimmered like heat haze, then flickered back. I realized the rule was still working. The siren hadn't just contained them. It contained us. And with the seals broken, the town was rewriting itself to keep balance. Copying, replacing, smoothing over the damage like editing film. Maybe that's what restoration meant. By nightfall, I couldn't trust what I saw anymore. The stars kept changing patterns. The sound of the siren drifted faintly through the trees, though no tower stood there now. I started recording everything. My voice, my memories, the things I was sure were real. Because each morning, something small disappeared: a street sign, a photograph, the smell of diesel from the trucks. Dry Creek wasn't just haunted. It was erasing the parts that didn't fit the new story, including me. By the next morning, even the air smelled different, too clean, like rain before it falls. The town looked perfect from a distance, porches swept, grass trimmed, not a window cracked. But up close, it was wrong. Surfaces didn't hold light the way they should. The streets bent slightly where they hadn't before, like the town had been rebuilt from memory, not design. I tried to call someone, anyone, but every number rang to the same message: the line you have reached is under maintenance. Even 911. The clock on my wall blinked 1200 again and again. I drove toward Main Street, hoping to find another person who remembered. Half the houses along the way looked freshly painted, though no one was outside. When I passed the diner, it was full. People at tables, laughing, eating. But the sound didn't match their mouths. I stood on the sidewalk and watched for a full minute before I noticed it. The entire loop repeated every 45 seconds. Same gestures, same laughs, same bites. The town had been restored, just not to now. When I walked inside, the smell of bacon and coffee hit me like something nostalgic but wrong, too sharp. I tapped the counter, but the waiters never turned. I shouted her name, but my voice made no echo. It was like shouting into a recording. Then, from the far booth, someone did look up. Sheriff Hartman. His skin had that same translucent cast as before, but his eyes focused this time. "You shouldn't be here," he said. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. I keep hearing that. Mind telling me where I should be. Gone. Can't seem to manage it. He tilted his head, a jerky movement like a puppet finding its strings. "You remember too much. They can't fold you in if you keep remembering." "Who's they?" He pointed to the people at the tables. "Them. Us. What's left?" Then, as if on cue, the loop reset again. Every person froze mid-motion, blinked once, and began repeating the same gestures. Hartman didn't move with them. He just watched me, still as stone. I stepped closer. "What happens if I forget?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "You stop asking questions." Then the scene blinked. The lights in the diner flickered, and Hartman was gone again. I stumbled outside. The sky had shifted to an odd yellow tint, like sunset trapped in midday. In the distance, the fog line crept back over the fields, slow and deliberate. I thought I saw shapes moving within it, figures walking the edge of visibility, tracing the town's boundary. The envelope from yesterday burned in my pocket. Dry Creek Restoration Protocol active. I couldn't let it finish. If the town reset completely, I'd lose everything, myself included. The only place left untouched by the illusion was the ridge, where Tower 5 had stood. I drove there as fast as I could, the truck rattling over cracked pavement. Halfway up, I saw the road split by a sinkhole that hadn't been there before. The earth looked melted around the edges, like something had bored its way up from below. When I killed the engine, I could hear faint whispering under the surface, as if the ground itself was holding conversation. I climbed the rest of the way on foot. The spot where the tower once stood was now a crater. At the center, half buried in ash, lay the black sphere again, the siren's heart, pulsing weakly. Thin veins of light still ran from it down into the soil. As I approached, my ears filled with static. It wasn't coming from the air. It was inside my head, vibrating against bone. Words began to form within it. Phase 2 incomplete. Containment integrity compromise. The voice wasn't human. It sounded like a recording stitched from 1,000 overlapping tones. I knelt beside the sphere. Heat radiated from it, rhythmic like breathing. Every pulse sent a faint tremor through the ground. "What are you?" I asked. The static sharpened. "Recorder guardian." "Interface." "Interface with what?" "Memory." It paused. Then, softer, "Do you remember the first sound?" The question hit me like a physical shove. The first sound, my childhood, the siren's wail when I was 8. The way it shook the windows, the way my mother whispered, "Don't look outside." "Yes," I said. The sphere brightened. "Then you are the last key." Before I could react, light poured from its surface, wrapping around my hand. I felt heat crawl up my arm, but it didn't burn. It merged, seeping into my skin. Visions flashed through my head in rapid bursts, the town being built, the mines dug too deep, the first time the siren was activated, the original council, Ellery Hartman, and others, standing in a circle around this same device. They weren't creating a warning, they were building a cage. The thing beneath Dry Creek wasn't evil, it was old. Something the miners uncovered, something that spoke in echoes and memory. The siren's tone wasn't a call, it was its language. Every wail a command to keep the world intact. When the council realized they couldn't destroy it, they rewired its voice into a pattern humans could hear, a rule we could live by. When the siren sounds, don't look outside. Because if you did, you'd see what it was asking to be freed from. And now I'd freed it. The vision snapped away. The sphere dimmed, cooling back to black. My hand glowed faintly where the light had touched it. Veins outlined in red. I felt something humming under my skin, faint but steady. I climbed down the ridge and drove toward town. On the way, I passed a field where stood in neat rows. Only, as I slowed, I realized they weren't scarecrows. They were people. Motionless, eyes open, faces turned toward the horizon. Every single one was humming. The same tone as the siren. By the time I reached Main Street, most of the fog had returned. It hung low, curling around street signs and lampposts. The buildings were still there, but their edges blurred, like unfinished sketches. The restoration protocol was speeding up. I parked outside Town Hall again. The doors were locked, but the glass gave when I pushed. Inside, the air was thick with static. Files lay scattered, their text smearing and reforming in loops, letters sliding off the page like liquid. At the back of the hall, the old radio transmitter still sat on its pedestal. Its light blinked red, active, the same signal that triggered the sirens. If I could reach it, maybe I could send a message out, something beyond Dry Creek's borders. Maybe. I turned the dials. Static filled the room. Then, through the noise of voices, "This is Dry Creek Restoration Control. Phase 2 complete. Phase 3, population merge in progress." "Who is this?" I shouted. "Stop it. You're killing us." Silence. Then laughter, distorted, mechanical, yet unmistakably human. Not killing. Correcting. The transmitter sparked, blue arcs licking across the panel. A high tone filled the room, the same frequency as the siren. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it was inside my head now, the sound threading through thought. Then, faintly beneath it, my mother's voice, "Nathan, come home." The tone stopped. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in my living room. The transmitter, the hall, the fog, all gone. The clock on the wall ticked normally again. Outside, sunlight poured across the yard. For a moment I thought I'd imagined everything. Then I looked down. The skin on my arm still glowed faint red. Someone knocked at the door. I opened it to find my mother standing there, holding a casserole dish. She smiled, exactly as she used to, except her eyes were wrong, bright, metallic. "I made your favorite," she said. "You must be hungry." Behind her, I could see the town, clean, perfect, restored. Children riding bikes, dogs barking, mail trucks rolling by. Only, where the sun should have been, there was a faint red circle burning through the clouds. I asked, "How long has it been?" She tilted her head. "What do you mean? How long since the siren?" Her smile didn't change. "There's never been a siren here, sweetheart." And somewhere, beneath that perfect blue sky, I heard the faintest echo of it. The first wail starting up again, distant but growing. At first I tried to play along. Pretend the town was real again. Pretend my mother's smile wasn't carved from something that didn't understand how faces work. Maybe if I acted the way they did, smiled back, ate the food, spoke on cue, the world would settle. It almost worked for a while. Mornings came bright and quiet. The neighbors waved. The air smelled of lilac and diesel, the same blend that always meant home. But every repetition was a little too perfect. The same cloud drifted past the same patch of sky at the same hour each day. Every dog barked in rhythm. Even the wind had a pattern. By the third sunrise, I couldn't unhear it, a faint ticking under everything, like the town ran on gears. I began testing the seams. I drove to the old highway, the one that used to end at the faded "Welcome to Dry Creek" sign. Now it didn't end at all, it looped. After exactly 8 miles, the road curved gently and fed me back into town from the opposite side. The mile markers repeated but mirrored 87654321, then 1234567 8. The second time I hit the gas station, the clerk greeted me word for word the same way. "Morning, friend. Need a fill?" I asked his name. He blinked once. "Morning, friend. Need a fill?" Behind him, the fluorescent lights hummed in perfect 4x4 time with the ticking. I left the car running and walked into the fields. The grass felt synthetic, waxy. When I tore a handful free, it bled light instead of sap, thin threads of red that evaporated before hitting the ground. By night, the ticking got louder. It cinched with my pulse. I tried not to sleep, afraid I'd wake in a new version of the same day, but exhaustion wins every fight. When I finally drifted off on the couch, I dreamed of the quarry. Only it wasn't empty anymore. The black sphere was back, larger, turning faster, and around it stood everyone from town, every version, singing. Their voices built the siren tone from the inside out. I woke gasping, my chest aching like I'd been screaming. The clock said 3:11 a.m., the same frozen time from the night everything broke. Outside, no wind, no crickets, just silence. Then, one knock at the window. I didn't move. The rule still lived somewhere in me, deep and trembling. When the siren sounds, don't look outside. But there was no siren now, just that gentle, polite knock. I turned my head. What looked back wasn't a face, just an outline pressed against the glass, featureless until it mimicked mine. Slowly it smiled. The glass fogged as if it breathed. When I blinked, it was gone. The next morning, the town had shifted again. Buildings were newer, cleaner. The population sign now read 713. Someone had been added. I walked to the library, one of the few places that had ever felt safe, and found it gutted. Shelves empty, walls humming faintly. In the center of the floor stood the black sphere again, small this time like a seed. It pulsed red every few seconds. On the wall behind it, words etched themselves letter by letter in dust. Restauration campi. I touched the sphere. My arm lit red again, brighter this time, and the ticking in my head matched the pulse exactly. Visions flooded back. Dry Creek rebuilt over and over, each cycle smoother, cleaner, erasing the rough edges of memory. Every time someone remembered too much, the system rewrote them. That was Phase 3 population merge. The town wasn't healing itself, it was digesting. I stumbled backward, hit a shelf, and a single book fell. Civil Defense Logbook Phase 1. Inside, one line was written again and again in my father's handwritings. The siren doesn't warn, it copies. Copies. That's what all of this was. A duplicate built from memory and noise, trying to replace what it lost. The real Dry Creek was gone. The people, the soil, the sky. What stood here now was the echo. I ran home. My mother was waiting on the porch, still smiling, holding that same casserole dish though days had passed. "You forgot to eat," she said inside. The table was already set. 2 plates, 2 forks. The food steamed though no stove burned. I sat across from her, trying to see the seams. The way her eyes blinked a beat too slow. The faint hum under her breath that matched the ticking. "Mom," I said softly, "when did Dad die?" She didn't answer right away. Then, "Don't look outside." The words hit like ice water. I pushed back from the table. "What did you say?" Her smile twitched. "Eat your dinner, sweetheart." "Say it again." She tilted her head the way Hartman had. "Eat your dinner." I bolted for the door. Behind me, the hum rose until the walls shook. When I looked back once more, the kitchen was empty. No table, no dishes, no light. Just a hollow room. Unfinished, waiting for instructions. Outside, the sky pulsed red. The town was flickering, switching frames faster now. Houses appearing and disappearing, people dissolving mid-step. I ran toward the ridge. The crater where the tower had stood was open again, glowing white hot. The sphere was larger than before, almost pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I felt it pulling at me, tugging through the veins it had lit under my skin. I knew what it wanted: completion. Some part of me, the part it had marked, was the final piece of its circuit. I could end it by stepping in, or maybe I'd just finish becoming it. The wind carried faint voices, my mother's, Hartman's, the whole town, layered like a choir. "Stay, stay, stay." I stood at the edge of the crater, sweat freezing on my neck. The rule echoed in my head again, clear as childhood. When the siren sounds, don't look outside. Maybe that's what it had always meant. Not to protect us from it, but to keep it from noticing we existed. The siren was a blindfold. The moment I'd looked, it saw me, and the loop began. I thought of the fake sky, the looping clouds, the field bleeding light. I thought of my father's note. It copies. If it needed me to finish the pattern, maybe the only way to stop it was to refuse to be copied. I stepped back from the light. The humming grew frantic, high-pitched pleading. My pulse raced in sync, the red in my veins brightening until it hurt to look. My skin cracked where the light pulsed through, tiny fissures glowing like glass. Then I did the only thing I hadn't done since childhood. I covered my ears and shut my eyes. I refused to look. The siren started again, a single, perfect note filled the world, bending everything inward. I felt the ground tilt, air collapsing, sound becoming weight. The note rose higher and higher until thought itself fractured. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the middle of a field. No fog, no red light, no town. Just open prairie stretching forever. The horizon glowed faintly gold, as if dawn were frozen there. Behind me, nothing. No road, no footprints. I touched my arm, the red lines were gone. My skin looked normal. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I couldn't hear the ticking. I might have laughed if I wasn't so afraid. The wind shifted. In the distance, faint and hollow, a siren began to rise. Not the Dry Creek tone, something smaller, mechanical. I turned toward the sound. On the far side of the field stood a highway sign, "Welcome to Dry Creek. Population 1. My truck sat beneath it, keys in the ignition. I walked closer, half expecting the illusion to collapse. It didn't. The seat smelled like dust and old oil, the way it always had. The radio flickered on by itself. Static first. Then a voice, Phase 4 commencing. Observation unit online. I reached to shut it off, but the voice shifted. "Nathan," it said. "Look outside." The road ahead shimmered, heat rippling across asphalt though the air was cold. For a heartbeat, I saw my reflection in the windshield, and another one behind it, smiling back, lips moving out of sync with mine. Then the siren screamed. The siren screamed, and the world peeled apart. Not shattered, not exploded. Peeled. Layers of sound and light unzipped like film reels splitting at the splice. I couldn't tell if I was standing still or moving, at a speed too fast to comprehend. The air had texture, a metallic shimmer like tinfoil flexing around me. My body vibrated until I couldn't feel its edges. Then everything went quiet again. I was back in Dry Creek, or something like it. The streets were empty, paved in glassy dust. The buildings leaned at odd angles, each one half transparent, flickering between styles and decades. The diner looked 1950s one second and modern prefab the next. The people, those few who walked, moved like reflections in water, faces swimming through versions of themselves. They didn't see me. When I called out, my voice came back wrong, split into layers, one younger, one older, one whispering ahead of the words I hadn't spoken yet. Every sound carried a delay. Every motion left a ghost. At the center of town stood the black sphere again, enormous now, tethered to the ground by red cords like veins anchoring an organ. They pulsed in rhythm with the siren's faint after-breath. The sound wasn't constant anymore. It came in size, each one rippling through the fog like a wave through water. I walked toward it because there was nowhere else to go. As I passed the houses, they whispered fragments, the clink of dishes, laughter, the thud of a closing door, all from years ago, voices of the real Dry Creek playing on a loop. I realized what this was, not the town, but its memory. The restoration protocol hadn't rebuilt Dry Creek in the world, it had uploaded it into the machine below. A perfect copy, a living museum run by the siren, sustained by every mind it had pulled in. When I reached the sphere, I saw faces moving under its surface, shadows pressing from the inside. My mother was one of them, lips parting as if to speak. For a second, I almost believed she could come out. Then I remembered her eyes, metallic, inhuman. The voice came from everywhere at once. Observation unit online. Where am I asked. Within containment. What containment? You broke sequence. We restored balance. I don't belong here. You do now. The air shimmered. A shape stepped from the fog. Hartman again, wearing the same uniform, the same expression, but no longer pretending to be human. The edges of his body flickered like static. You held too much, he said. The others forgot, you remembered. The system needs memory, he reached out. His hand passed through my shoulder like smoke. Don't worry. It won't hurt after the first rewrite. No. I backed away. I'm not staying here. He tilted his head. There's nowhere else. The world around us rippled. The town's horizon folded inward, bending like a reflection on rippling water. Beyond it, only a black expanse, pulsing faintly red. The siren sighed again, long, almost gentle, and my vision blurred. Every time it breathed, the world sharpened for a heartbeat, then softened again, like reality was being adjusted for focus. I ran. The ground buckled under my feet, shifting like the surface of a drum. Buildings flickered through decades as I passed, wooden shacks turning to brick to dust. Each time I looked back, the sphere was closer. It wasn't following me physically, it was recentering the world around me. I reached the quarry. The pit was gone, replaced by a mirrored surface stretching flat and endless. My reflection stared back, lagging half a second behind. I whispered, "If you copy everything, what happens to the original?" The reflection smiled first. "You become the echo." It stepped forward. The surface broke like thin ice, and hands reached out, my hands, dozens of them, grabbing at my wrists. I pulled free, stumbled back, breath ragged. The voice filled the sky. Phase 4 complete. Observation stable. No. I shouted. You don't get to finish this. I took the old key from my pocket, the one marked 5, and hurled it at the mirror. It hit with a sound like struck metal, then sank through, ripples spreading outward. For a second, the entire town shimmered. The siren hiccuped, and beneath the static I heard something new. Silence. Real silence. The ticking stopped. The hum vanished. Even the red light dimmed. The faces in the sphere looked up, startled, maybe afraid. Without the sound, they weren't connected. The illusion began to falter. The houses wavered, collapsing into outlines. The people froze mid-step, dissolving like paper in water. The siren let out one last weak wail, fractured and dying. Then everything fell. I don't know how long it lasted. Seconds, hours. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in mud at the bottom of a real quarry. The fog was gone. The air smelled of dirt and diesel and rain. Above me, the sky was overcast, gray heavy. Dry Creek was gone. No lights, no houses, no people. Just empty land where the town should have been. I climbed the ridge on shaking legs. The highway stretched straight to the horizon. The sign that once read "Welcome to Dry Creek" lay half buried in weeds. For a moment I thought I was free. Then I noticed the radio tower on the hill, new, silver, humming softly. I approached, dread tightening in my chest. A small screen on its base glowed faintly green. Words scrolled across it in that same mechanical rhythm. DRY Siark Restaurant Succs Sulawai Par Unio and Flestiaonl. Below it, my name, Nathan Cole. I reached for the power switch. My reflection flickered in the screen, then smiled. Just a second before I did, I froze. My own voice came from the tower speaker, soft and even. Observation report. Sequence complete. Containment stable. I stepped back, shaking my head. No, that's not me. But it was. The tower's surface shimmered, showing me, standing there, hand outstretched, eyes hollow. And behind that reflection, the faint red glow returned, pulsing through the clouds like a heartbeat starting up again. The radio crackled. A new voice. Calm, clinical, good work, Unit Cole. Continue monitoring for external breaches. Remember protocol. I shouted into the wind. There's no one left to monitor. Static swallowed the reply. Then the tower light blinked once, twice steady. Something inside me answered in rhythm. My veins glowed faintly again, sensing to the pulse. I turned away, but my body didn't follow. The reflection in the tower did, perfectly obedient. It lifted its hand, pressed its palm against the glass, and whispered the rule that started it all. When the siren sounds, don't look outside. And for the first time, I understood. The rule was never to protect me from them. It was to protect them from me, from every human impulse to look, to know, to reach through the glass. Curiosity was the infection, I was the breach. Now I was the seal. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because the tower's shadow stretched over me as the day dimmed. The hum inside it deepened, rhythmic, steady. In the reflection, my lips moved in perfect time with the voice from the speaker. Observation unit online. My chest rose and fell with the machine. The siren sighed again, soft and distant, rolling over the empty field. Somewhere beyond the fog, maybe another town is hearing it for the first time. A mother telling her child not to look. A boy pressing against the window anyway. It always starts the same. It always ends here. And when the siren sounds again, when the air vibrates and the world holds its breath, I'll be the one watching from the inside, making sure no one forgets the rule.